What's going on, everybody? My name is Sean O'Brien, and this is episode 2 of MakerHUB, a podcast focused on innovation, design thinking, and all things entrepreneurship. And today I'm here with two very special guests and two new members of the Pitt community here who have their own lab now here in Benedum, the Pitt Security Lab. And world-renowned security experts can unlock any lock. And I know that's a big claim, but these guys have been through it all. And today, I'd really like to talk about where they've been, what you guys have encountered in the world of owning your own business in a space that is very crowded and is, if you don't have the right qualifications, can be a bit iffy on the law side. So I'd really like to hear, number one, from each of you, who you are, very short, quick introduction on who you are. And then we can go through kind of how you guys met, how you guys are doing what you're doing today, and why you're here at Pitt, and what you're going to do here at Pitt. So,
well, that's going to take more than
yeah, that's going to take more than an hour.
Okay.
Well, my name is Mark Tobias. I'm a lawyer. My undergraduate major was journalism and law enforcement, and I started picking locks when I was 15, much to the chagrin of my parents. My dad was a Carnegie Tech graduate in mechanical engineering. When I got out of law school, I went to work for the Attorney General in South Dakota and then the governor's office, did criminal investigations and security work most of my career. And wrote several books along the way. In 2006, I got connected with Tobias Blues Manis, and amazingly, his first name is my last name. We coordinated with our parents before we were born on that. And so Toby and I got together. Toby's a locksmith originally from Venezuela and dying to go back, by the way, because they're doing so great down there. And so Toby can address that more.
No, you know that is not true. Okay.
Well, you keep telling me. So we have developed a unique business where we really have no competition in our space. And that is that we serve virtually all of the major lock companies in Europe and the United States. We figure out how to open locks when they can't be opened. And mostly high security cylinders, although we do some consumer level work, both with locks, safes, alarm systems, security hardware.
That includes also if we have to develop any tool to bypass these locks. So that's what we do. We develop these techniques, tools, in order to bypass the highest locks, or high security locks in the world.
And we've written several books along the way and gathered several patents. And it's a very unique field. Locks. The reason we came to Pitt, we had dealt with several universities in the past trying to establish a security engineering lab. And with some very large schools, much larger than Pitt. And the stumbling block has always been intellectual property. And because the chancellor at Pitt came from industry, he understands that you can't do cooperative work with industry without waiving IP rights. If you have students working for you, our clients would never give up their IP rights. And so your university very wisely recognized that. And that's that, and all my family lives in Pittsburgh, so it was a natural. I have a home out in South Dakota also. And but Pitt's a really fine university, great reputation, and Pittsburgh's a really neat city.
I think that really kind of harvests the mentality of innovation here at Pitt, because as soon as you waive those IP rights, it all of a sudden becomes you have a mind of your own. You can do whatever you need to do, and utilizing Pitt resources in a way that when you go ahead and leave, that is yours at the end of the day.
Yeah. So we got together with your administration, your engineering school. It took a year. We met with virtually every associate dean, and they figured out that we actually knew what we were talking about. And we train engineers all over the world for our lock companies. We are bringing real world problems to engineering students that are doing work for us. We're co-teaching a course, innovative design, with Rick Winter and Dr. Winter, and he's retired Alcoa engineer. And we hope the goal is to get students to think very alternatively, because that's what we do. We look at things that look perfect, which is most locks, and when we get into them, they're not, and we figure out how to exploit vulnerabilities that the manufacturers never dreamed of. And the reason this is important, because I'm sure a lot of the students that are listening think, well, who cares? Well, who cares is the lock manufacturers to start with, because especially in America, it all translates to liability. And they can be sued, and we filed class action lawsuits for defective products. This can be very expensive. Aside from the security issues, there's liability, there's standards, there's certifications, contractual issues, and lock manufacturing is incredibly complicated today, which is, and our clients own probably 200 factories around the world. These are made for engineering students, for internships, to learn about the intricacies of manufacturing a product that has a 0.002 of an inch tolerance.
I think what you're bringing to the table here, Pitt, is super fascinating from the sense that, we as students, we go into industry and they ask us to make this thing, design this thing. So we go and we do that how we know best, which is the maybe right or wrong way, whatever that may be. But we go and we do that, and we try to think of everything outside of the box that may go wrong with it. Then you come in and you say, hang on, there's this big issue that no one looked at, and we're going to either, from the law end, do something about it, or your company's going to look real bad when we go and unlock all your locks with a single key that you've manufactured.
Well, Sean, that's the other problem. Because for years, we were really the most hated guys in the industry, because we made fools out of all these companies, because their engineering was not good as far as security. The problem, one of our favorite lines, design engineers are taught how to make things work. They're not taught how to break them. It's not in the mentality. And we have 100 different attack vectors that we can look at and analyze locks and products to figure out what's wrong with them. This is not in your vocabulary. And there's a real need for security engineers, both hardware and software. A critical need. My favorite slogan is security is employment and employment is security. And that's really true. Mm-hmm. And so we hope to bring a dose of reality in product design and analysis to the students. And we're also collaborating with a digital security lab in Paris, France. Toby and I were just there last week, because everything now is about the Internet of Things. Everything's interconnected, and all of it can be hacked. Mm-hmm. And that's not a bold statement, it's just the truth.
No,
right.
No, actually, when we were at that meeting in last week, we were talking about the locks that some customers have that now can be opened by this automated system. And we were talking about Alexa, and the conversation came out and said, well, can Alexa open the lock from the outside? Can you yell from the outside, Alexa, open the lock? And we all looked around and said, well, I'm assuming yes, I'm assuming no. Well, short story, Mark did a small research on the net and found out it didn't happen with Alexa, but it happens with Apple.
It happens with Apple, it's happened with Google. So now, because some guy was yelling from outside and his next door neighbor opened the door and the door opened. And so, because we have a technology to introduce audio under the door to trigger these devices. So the takeaway is, if you have a home automation device that does things, better require a password to do that. And
Mhm.
so Google, Apple, and Amazon realized what the vulnerability is. It's incredible they didn't think about it
Mhm.
when they developed this. I'm sure the guys in the lab, which typical engineers, said, "Oh, isn't this cool? Let's make it open the door." They never thought about the consequences of that. Why would they? Oh gosh.
Yeah, and I can guarantee you, it was not only one person in charge of that project.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was like let's say 20 person, 20 people,
Yeah.
involved
On the
in
design
that,
team,
and
yeah.
none of them just thought for a moment that okay, what are the security implications of what we are doing?
So do you think part of it is that they don't want to think about that side?
No, I don't agree with. I don't think that at
No.
all. Every engineer we dealt with, and as I said, we work with them all over the world. Literally, I was just in South Africa a few weeks ago, working with crime lab engineers. They all want to do a good job. They want to make a product that works, that is secure, but they don't understand the basic tenets, especially physical security, which is our expertise. Hardware, cybersecurity. To be honest, we really haven't interfaced yet with your cyber side, but Pitt is really going all out for that with their institute now on cyber and legal policy. And because I'm a lawyer, I look at everything A, pessimistically, B, cynically. And my concern is what can happen, bad things happen 50 steps down the road. And we have also, if you look on YouTube or do a Google search, we have been famous for using 11-year-old kids to open locks, especially at DEF CON. I'm sure some of your audience knows what DEF CON is. We lectured there for 9 years in a row on physical security. And when an 11-year-old girl can open a high security lock in under 30 seconds, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And it's not only a security problem, it's a huge public relations problem. And it never goes away because YouTube is never updated. And all this video now, and the world lives on video. If you want to look up a product, you look on Google and you see 50 videos, and it says that an 11-year-old kid can break into it or whatever, you're not going to buy that product.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's no disclaimers as far as dating of the reports and updates. I mean, I've really been pushing for that in the industry. So this is really a complex area. My mom, she's an artist, not technical at all. My brother's a movie maker, and he has no technology expertise. And my mom always asked me, what is so difficult about inserting a key in a lock that's occupied your mind since you've been 15? And I said, well, it's not difficult to insert the key in the lock. It's very complicated to make it work. So we think we can bring to Pitt students an appreciation, a different perspective on solving problems. And we're doing, as you know, tomorrow night, Wednesday, a seminar. This is the second one. We did one E-Week last year. Security challenges. We're going to talk about basic locks, master keying, lock picking, and we'll do several of these. We have 90 students that registered before we cut off the registration, and they're still trying to register because there's always been an interest in locks and safes. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to tap into that for the benefit of the student body.
So the amount of time that you've been working with students thus far, undergraduate, graduate, PhD, whatever the case may be, what do you think the biggest issue is that we as students aren't picking up on, or that we're not approaching with the mindset that you guys, bring to the table from your business side?
Picking being the operative word, of course.
Right.
That was good.
Right.
It's just that most of the students aren't presented in our world with real world problems. That's what we can bring to the table. Our product realization course that we're co-teaching right now, I think we have 6 different projects, I think 24 students, involving locks, involving water energy flow systems, which is an allied project, involving a medical device for the elderly to help them walk better. We're doing, I mean, these are real world projects. These are not theoretical issues. So we're interfacing with our students now about solving real problems. And because you guys haven't been out in the real world to speak of, even with your internships, you know, there's so many factors in analyzing a current product or developing one that you need to be familiar with, starting with legal. And then, of course, technical issues, security issues, manufacturing issues, pricing issues, marketing issues. So we're trying to introduce, because we deal with all of that, we're trying to introduce students, and we hope a lot more of them will sign up next year for the course. Because they'll be intrigued, they'll learn things, and everybody likes locks. And you know, I go and Toby goes to sports lockpicking groups in both Europe and the United States. It's housewives, it's doctors, it's lawyers, it's students, it's little kids. I mean, I've got a cousin that's 8 years old in Pittsburgh that I gave a Japanese puzzle box to. I went to Hakone, Japan, where these are designed from 200 years ago with secret sliding panels. It took my little cousin about 15 minutes to figure out how to open it. Now, the incredible thing is, one of our clients, we were giving a lecture up in Canada a few years ago, and we brought some of these puzzle boxes. Some of them, 27 moves to open them, some of them 81, and I've got one that's 1,500 moves. If anybody out there can open it, I'll give you a real reward, because I don't have the patience to do it. I brought it back from Japan. We use puzzle boxes to train engineers because they look perfect. They look just like locks. There's no keys. There's no way to get in because they're all secret sliding panels. And they're great for teaching. The design engineers sat there and struggled. They couldn't open the boxes. The kids at DEF CON, my cousin, they can open the boxes. So it's a mindset. And the other thing with locks, we wrote a book about the best high security lock in America after we broke it. And nobody could believe we did that because it was a complex hack. And it took us 18 months from start to finish, including writing the books, and now we've received several patents as well. Nobody thought. The best answer is never in a million years. This is what all the design engineers tell us. And I laugh and says, yeah, well, you'll be really surprised how quick a million years goes by. And so this is what we do. It's a real intellectual challenge, but it's also physical. It's much better than chess.
By the way, for everyone listening, it's Engineering 1050 Product Realization with Dr. Winter. I'm currently in it right now, and it's a great course. And these guys are full of knowledge that you can tap into, and they're here to help, and they want you guys to participate in what they've got going on.
Yeah, Sean, we really hope you pass the course.
I also hope so as well.
Yeah.
But one of the things...
And you're working on a really interesting project.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
which has real-world application to the elderly.
Correct. And with this comes a lot of experience that you don't necessarily expect to encounter, especially, you know, from the law, from the marketing, from the customer discovery, from all these angles that we as engineers kind of assume, oh, someone else will handle that. We're just the engineers. Someone else will do this, you know, that's fine. And when you can understand all of these different angles that go into product development, you now have a better understanding of, okay, now I'm gonna, from the design side, now I can sit down and say, this person wants this person wants this, here's this demographic, and all these different metrics that I never even took into account before I even looked at all these other ways of analyzing what's gonna happen after I design.
Well, and think about when and if you get a job. So you can pay back the hundreds of thousands of dollars in tuition.
That's correct.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yep.
We don't want you starting off in life without debt.
Mm-hmm.
So
maybe you can help with that.
Yeah. So think about working for a company that's developing a new product. You will now have better tools to sit in design and planning meetings and say, well, what about this? And have you guys thought about that? And have you thought about the legal implications? And what happens if this fails? These are all really. Last year, my cousin graduated in environmental engineering at Pitt, and I think she took this course, but from a different instructor. So I sat for 3 hours with her and her 2 classmates who were designing a bike lock. Well, we know a little bit about bike locks. If you look up kryptonite bike locks, in 2003, we opened it with a ballpoint pen. Much to the chagrin of Schlegel, it cost him $10 million, frankly, because I was bored on a Sunday afternoon and put out a security alert. And because and that's a typical problem. The design, this is the best bike lock in America. The design engineers that made a tubular lock, it was a 7-pin lock, they didn't understand basic lock design. They didn't understand impressioning, which is a way to attack locks with soft materials that basically makes an imprint of how the pins are reacting in the lock. They didn't know any of that. And they saved 10 cents a lock because they cheapened it up, and which meant they changed the tolerances, which is what you guys are directly involved in. And tomorrow night we're going to talk about tolerances and why they're relevant. And so all of a sudden, kryptonite had this massive nightmare in the media because all these reporters were calling saying, why can I open my $125 bike lock with a 19-cent Bic pen? Well, because the design engineers didn't have a clue about lock design. And of course, these were made offshore, which exacerbated the problem because they only do what they're told in manufacturing to make things cheaper. And so this is why this course is relevant, because you will be much better equipped to sit in design meetings and say, you're going to get into trouble with this if you do it this way. And it's also very time consuming because, I mean, we're involved in a project right now. Basically 4 years, we looked at a lock design in Europe and everybody told us how great it was, and we were standing in front of all the engineers with their AutoCAD. You know, they're showing us up on the display, and Toby and I looked at it, and we says, you know what, if you compromise that one critical component, we're going to open your lock. They said, well, yeah, but you can't do that. I said, yeah, bet me. So we did it, and it took them 4 years to fix it, because every time they try to fix it with more complexity just means more vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what we do. We have to make a lot of our own tools. And we think about everything really differently. Toby and I started off when we were 5 years old taking stuff apart.
And I think when we did the medical book also,
Yeah.
we totally changed. Actually, when we start talking about medical and we start asking questions, I'm asking questions to a person that I thought that has all the answers. And I was working with medical for 30 years.
This is the best high security lock in America, and they're on campus.
When we start like taking notes, we say, well, we don't know the answer of that.
Yeah.
So it was amazing. After 40 years, you know, medical.
And it's still the best lock.
Yeah.
But we wrote a book about it, and they've made improvements. But honestly, there was some embedded design defects, very subtle. Nobody had a clue.
Mm-hmm.
And we not only found the defect, we figured out how to exploit it. And that was a real eye-opener for the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up on the Underwriters Laboratory Standards Technical Panel for the last 10 years, analyzing and helping rewrite standards. Because the whole world runs on standards, as you guys know.
Mm-hmm.
ISO, ANSI, UL, BHMA, everything in the world runs VDS in Germany. Okay, so like this company had their lock bumping came out in 2006, where you can walk up to a lock with a special key. We're going to show that tomorrow night. Whack, whack, the lock is open. Lots. Not all the time, but lots of times.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy to do. And so this particular company thought this was a real advertising bonanza, and they had, to their credit, VDS, which is the testing authority in Germany. They had them test their locks against lock bumping, and VDS says no way. Same thing with UL, you know, and so they all got a really big surprise, and because it's really a critical threat. So in 2005, our colleagues in Europe went public with it. 2006, we went public in America, and ended up on lots of TV programs being interviewed because of the threat. I was on the Today Show with Matt Lauer. You remember Matt Lauer, don't you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know who? I broke into 2 houses, high-end houses in New Jersey. 5 seconds. The door's
You
open.
broke. You have permission to enter those
Well,
residents.
yeah,
When you
but-
said I broke into.
Well, I did.
Ah.
That
Sounds too.
But you see, as a lawyer,
Well, okay.
it's
As a friend of a lawyer, I'm telling you, don't say that.
no, but that's what we did.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there was a disclaimer that I think Matt Lauer at the end said, you know, he's our security expert and whatever. But this is a prime example because the lady that owned the house, and these were $1 million up houses, and with deadbolts. And the lady, when I walked up the door on camera, whack, whack, the door is open. No damage, no trace, no nothing. She says, oh my God, my locksmith told me that the deadbolt would protect me. And I said, yeah. What he didn't tell you is the deadbolt, if your door is done correctly and the strike and everything is done correctly, yes, your deadbolt will protect you, but the lock that controls your deadbolt won't, unless it's the right kind of lock. So this is what we do. And we've caused a great deal of trouble in the industry over the years.
When do you guys feel like, and this is a question for both of you, when do you guys feel like you gained full credibility? You know, of course, in the initial stages of something like this, it's very like, okay, who are these guys? We don't really care.
No,
Blow
it
them
wasn't
off.
who are these guys, it's who the hell are these guys?
Even better.
Yeah, even
But
better.
at what point
Yeah.
was it?
Yeah.
At what point did you guys realize? All right, the industry knows what we do. We are, you know, the guys that are going to kind of raise hell, if you will, within the industry. And
Well, we
when
didn't
we're
intend to do that. We honestly didn't. I mean, I've been a member of the Associated Locksmiths of America since 1991, American Society for Industrial Security, Crime Lab. I'm a tech advisor to all the crime labs. We didn't start off to antagonize everybody. The problem is that nobody would admit that they had problems.
And that actually drove us full.
Yeah.
We didn't know where we were going.
We had no
We
idea.
knew that
No idea.
we were doing a good service. Hey, this can be improved. You know, we can easily open. We are both involved in security. This can be definitely improved, and we want the company to improve it.
And we had a great time. Every time we went to DEF CON, it got worse for the lock companies because it's international publicity.
all right.
We don't. There's certain things we don't disclose other than government. Okay, and I'm also which I would urge every student to join if they're over 18 years old, is the FBI InfraGuard. I was just at a briefing last week. There's a huge FBI office in Pittsburgh. This is a cooperative information sharing group that the FBI started to share information about the protection of critical infrastructure in the United States. It's really a good thing for students to join. And they'll do you have to be a U.S. citizen. But they'll do a background investigation for 3 to 6 months. If they clear you, then you get all kinds of bulletins and alerts. Really a good thing. And so we didn't start off to antagonize the industry. It just happened that way. And actually it was a lot of fun because we kept discovering real vulnerabilities that cost them a lot of money. And they didn't know what to do about it. They wanted to sue us. They hired lawyers. But truth is an absolute defense to libel, and we always have video, and we're very careful about what we do. And at the end of the day, they figured out, you know what? Maybe these guys really do know what they're talking about, and they can help us. And then we started having a dialogue that led to, you know, we work for lots of companies, and we have helped them. We have protected them and kept them from getting sued, kept them from nightmares on the internet, and frankly have contributed to better products.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate goal. And you guys can do that as engineers because, frankly, Pitt students, CMU students, and there's CMU kids coming over tomorrow night also. You guys are the ones that are going to be ultimately responsible, and you're going to get blamed if there's product deficiencies. Because it's you guys that design this stuff. And so you really better know what you're talking about.
Right.
And you've got a great future ahead of you because lots of the old-time design engineers are retiring from these companies. So it's going to be up to you to figure out what you're doing.
Right.
And there's a lot of knowledge now that's going to be lost because all those, there's lots of literature out there now, but we keep getting paid because design engineers keep making the same mistakes over and over again. And they forget about basic laws of physics. They forget about magnetism. There was a huge class action lawsuit in 2010 against a company that actually there's locks on campus here, push button locks. You can be open with a magnet if you know what you're doing in 2 seconds. This was very expensive. Okay. And, they were designed originally in 1965 when there were no neodymium rare earth magnets. Well, but they were selling them in 2010, so they're judged by today's technology standards. And so it cost them a lot of money.
Right.
Nobody got hurt, thankfully, but it cost them a lot of money. And that's what you guys are going to be involved in. Whether you're building roads, bridges, electronics, locks, whatever, it doesn't matter. You really have to learn your craft, but you have to think alternatively.
Right.
So we hope to contribute to that.
What would you guys say is your favorite win from the you found a lock, you cracked it, company didn't want to admit that you guys had cracked it, and then went on to service them?
Well, we've had a lot of those. Read Wired magazine.
Okay.
May or July 2009.
But your most memorable that comes right to mind.
That was pretty memorable. That was pretty memorable because we ended up at number 4 Times Square at the Condé Nast building, and we were told either produce or you guys are going to get sued by this company because everybody says you don't know what you're talking about. And we had done a lot of lecturing, and so they sent over a bunch of sealed locks under courier, and we got them all open, and each under 10 minutes, which is with the high security standard. And then we bumped them open, and then everybody thought, oh, that was probably one of our more memorable moments.
Yeah, and I think that defines also what we're doing right now, because by that time, even that we knew what we were doing. When you open locks, you don't know what's going to happen. You can be, but we knew what we were able to do. But the chances, there were 6 locks, so we were saying, well, if we don't open any lock,
well, we'd be in big trouble because we would have gotten sued.
Okay.
Probably living in
I told Toby, we're moving to Argentina, where his wife is from, if we don't open these locks.
So then you can square a little bit, okay, 2 locks against 6, 4. So, because it was remember that when we attacked this company, everybody was saying, it is impossible.
They're still saying it.
Okay.
There's a lot of locksmiths out there saying, hey, because I get emails, because I write for Forbes, I get all these emails because I've written so many articles. And all these people say, well, my locksmith says this is impossible, but I've got a break-in, and not just one brand, all of them.
Right.
And so, there's a lot of miseducation. It's a complicated business. And, that was probably...
Yeah. When we opened the 6 locks, when we opened the lock, it was okay. It was no doubt.
Yeah, it was all videotaped. All the lawyers were there. And frankly, Toby picked open the locks, and then they had the fellow that wrote the articles, a really good writer. And he handed me one of the locks. These are brand new out of the box. And said, okay, company says you can't open these. Go ahead and bump it open. We had developed 4 keys that would allow us to pick or bump any of their locks, non-master keyed cylinders. And Toby handed it to me. And I got to say, I mean, I'm good at it, but I was also lucky. 7 seconds, and the lock's open. And at that point, we were done. And I remember looking at the camera and said, "Are we done? I think we're done. It's over." And from then on, everybody said, and then of course the book came out, and everybody said, "Oh, wow! Everything we thought might not exactly be true." And so, and we've done so much lecturing at universities, like all over, and DEF CON, lots of security conferences. So everybody knows us. And because you had asked me the other day, how do you develop a business? Because I know a lot of you guys, when you graduate, you don't want to work for people. You want to have your own business. It's very difficult in America, but there is opportunity. And in our world of security, there's lots of different facets or components that you have to have achieved, just like degrees. My law degree, it's a Juris Doctor. Yeah, okay. It gives me my law enforcement background is better than my law degree as far as for looking at things very differently, okay, because I used to catch bad guys. And so you have to be way ahead of them to figure out if there's a crime, how they did it, how to catch them. And so basically that's what we do with locks. It's an investigation.
We don't follow rules.
Yeah, we don't follow rules.
Like the bad guys. When you are so structured and you follow, we follow procedures. We follow the flow of information. But when we want to break locks, we are wild. We have open locks with hair dryers, straws.
Yeah, we had a case. One of our clients in Europe wanted to buy some intellectual property from a bunch of software guys who had developed a cylinder that used a wire that when you run current through it, it expands and it gets hot. So they thought they could use that as a blocking mechanism. With the right credentials, you energize the wire, it would block rotation of the plug. So our clients were looking at buying the IP. And the first thing I can tell you is software engineers know nothing about locks. They really don't. They're mechanics. So we looked at this. That was the dumbest idea ever. We opened it with a hairdryer. Because if the element was heated up, it would either, I can't remember, expand or contract to allow us to open the lock. And there was a safety issue that you could get trapped in your house.
Okay.
And so our client didn't buy the IP.
Right.
So that's a perfect example. They just didn't have a clue. I was out in California with one of our clients, and they had and I wasn't not involved in the design of a new computer lock. And basically, this was a spring-loaded lock. The computers, some of them have a slot on them for locks. Okay, Apple doesn't, but most of them do. So they're showing me this prototype. They're on their way to Taiwan to get hard tooling. And the chief engineer of the company, and I'd worked for him for quite a while, I says, "Have you guys got a big plastic screwdriver?" And this was a tubular lock, which means that the keyway is round. There's nothing to stick inside. A normal lock is basically a rectangular keyway, okay, where the key goes in. So these are round keys, like on vending machines. So I looked at the chief engineer and I said, "Have you got a big plastic screwdriver?" He says, "Well, what do you want that for? There's no place to stick it in." I says, "Oh, humor me." So he brings me a big plastic screwdriver. I push the spring-loaded button so that the lock is locked. I says, "Everybody agree the lock is locked?" "Yeah." Whack. With the screwdriver handle, the lock's open. He looked at me and says, "You can't do that." So I locked it back. I was, "Oh, okay, sorry." So, back. Did it again. And he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, our best friend is Sir Isaac Newton. You might read about him. from 350 years ago, and his third law of motion and his first law of motion, because we open locks that way. And as a lawyer, I can certainly bend laws sometimes, but I can't bend laws of physics. And so Sir Isaac Newton really helps us. Lock bumping is about Sir Isaac Newton before the pin tumbler lock was ever invented. And so this is what you guys as engineers, engineering students, if you can absorb some of this. I mean, our best rule for design engineers, lock engineers, which may seem wrong, is the key never unlocks the lock. Everybody says, what are you talking about? The key always unlocks it. No, it really doesn't. The key actuates the mechanism that unlocks the lock. That's the first way we want you to start thinking about locks. Because when you pick a lock, we've made keys from credit cards. We announced one of the biggest companies in America. We figured out how to make plastic keys out of MasterCards to open their high security locks. So we announced at DEF CON that they take MasterCard. So this was not good for them. It was good for us. So this is all thinking alternatively. When you were a kid, did you ever play with a thing called rinky dink or shrinky dink?
I don't think so.
It was a material that you could print things on, animals and stuff, and cut it out and put it in the oven, and then it would harden.
Okay.
So we figured out that we were going to make keys for a high security lock with shrinky dink, and of course it got immediate laughter. And the news media, all the reporters that talked to us, says, "I used that when I grew up." Well, everybody knows about that.
The only thing that we never baked them.
Yeah, we never baked them. Yeah, we didn't have to bake them. Yeah,
we just used them
or sprinkle them with cinnamon or sugar.
Yeah.
But it was a hit because, and then the lady that owned the company, after she says, "Hey, I'm not cooperating with you guys because that's illegal," I said, "No, it isn't. It's called research." Then she said, when she was from Wisconsin, this company is like 100 years old. She says, "You know what's incredible? NASA was spending $10,000 for the same material that we sell them for $3 to do the exact same thing that you guys are doing."
Right.
So, like I said, we can bring a lot of experience and facets to your thinking so that you can think about things differently. We're not teaching you how to break into things.
Right.
Although we work with some kids at MIT that figured out how to 3D print keys for the high security locks at MIT, and one of our clients was really upset about that.
I bet.
And I said, "Hey, no, you guys don't get it. This is what engineering students are supposed to do." They looked at the keys, which are very distinctive. They have side bit milling as well as the normal cuts. And they figured out that they could map that and print it. So that started the security revolution in the 3D printing business that we're deeply involved in now. And actually in our lab, we're just ordering a new 3D printer that's got a thousandths of an inch tolerance so that we can print this kind of stuff and test different locks.
Right.
So, that's a thumbnail. That's what we hope to accomplish at Pitt. And if we do, and we teach all your fellow students how to look at problems differently, how to figure out there is a problem. Half the time you don't know there is a problem, and that's the other problem.
And where to look for
and where to look, and how to think about something and say, okay, this really looks perfect. What's wrong with this picture?
Right.
Same thing in the automotive industry. It's every industry has got the same issues.
And there's a very common thread with all of your solutions, and it's that it doesn't cost $1 million to create the things that you're using to break these locks.
No,
It's household items. It's very it's items that you wouldn't necessarily think should do, and that's what the industry doesn't want you to do either.
Let me tell you that we also were forced to work that way. When we at any moment find something wrong with the lock, the first defense is, well, you guys are the world expert. You can open anything.
Yeah, that's the line.
So we're not worried about it.
Yeah.
So we were forced to
go to simplistic tools.
Yeah.
So that our expertise, what everybody doesn't understand, everybody says, well, you guys are the world experts, so it doesn't matter what you can open because you can open just about everything. Not quite. It sounds good. So, and my answer is, okay, That may be true, but once some smart guy figures out how to compromise a lock, system, software, whatever, and puts it on the internet, now it can be replicated by a 15-year-old kid.
Right.
And that's because he doesn't need to be a genius.
Mechanical locks are very difficult, to fix in the field if
Yeah.
you find a problem with them.
Not like software.
So,
And Toby, let me give you the best prime example in Pennsylvania. 50 miles from Pittsburgh is Sharon, Pennsylvania. The company made hundreds of millions of dollars up there by developing the club, the little red gizmo that protects your steering wheel so
Right.
your car can't be stolen.
Right.
So I get called years ago by a buddy of mine who was in the FBI, who I taught how to pick locks. I did a seminar up at the Bureau in Minneapolis and taught him how to pick locks. So he calls me and says, "Hey, have you seen the club? I think this lock is really easy to pick," because it was a wafer lock. It wasn't high security. I said, "We don't have a car theft problem in South Dakota, but I'll go buy one." So I went and bought one at Sears for like $50, and picking wasn't the problem. It was a ratchet mechanism that they had developed, just like I said, a handcuffs. So when you collapse the bar, they're angled cuts, so the spring-loaded dog would brrr, but you can't pull it apart without turning the key. Well, I figured out with a 5-cent piece of wire how to open it in 5 seconds. And so ultimately, I ended up in Sharon, Pennsylvania, with the president of the company, Jim Winter, who owned half the town. He died a long time ago, but really good guy. And they had tested these. The Pittsburgh Police Department was advertising nationally. 650 police departments have endorsed these. Yeah, 5 seconds. And I said, "You know what your problem is? You have a legal problem. Because the kids are going to figure this out and go through parking lots and change clubs on different cars so you can't drive your car off." And so I ended up, actually, Jim, we sat across the table in Winter's office because the company was Winter International. And he says, "Okay, smart boy, you broke it, now you fix it." So I drew out a diagram. 18 months later, I had a patent and I assigned to him to fix it. And that's a perfect example because there could have been class action lawsuits and nightmares for them because they made really a lot of money. And actually, I ended up being an expert witness because a competitor challenged their patent, that it was obvious what they did. And so I actually ended up testifying, writing an affidavit, whatever, that saved their patent, another patent they had. So, like I said, this is a really complicated business, but for us, it's a fun business. We never know when we look at a lock whether we're going to open it.
Right.
But we always have the attitude that we will, because if you don't think you can, you won't.
Right.
But we never know at the beginning where we're going to end up.
Right.
And frankly, sometimes we're really surprised.
And I think with something especially like lock picking, initially it sounds like a very negative thing.
No, it
It
isn't.
sounds like breaking in.
It's just
It sounds like
hacking.
right. But what it really comes down to is, like I said, it sounds negative, but at the same time, you're out there trying to help people, and you're helping these companies, or you're essentially saving these companies when it comes down to it. And you can think about it in a very cynical, very negative way, or you can say, listen, if you guys aren't doing it, some guy who's going to rob someone's car with the bar across the steering wheel is going to do it for you.
Or the VAG group, which is Volkswagen, Audi, Bentley, I think Jaguar is part of that group. For 20 years, they hadn't updated their lock. Last year, Toby and I were in Prague, in the Czech Republic, lecturing at a security conference. One of our colleagues from China, who's the world master in lockpicking tools for cars, under $100, I wrote an article on Forbes. In under 1 minute, the lock is open for all the expensive cars, and the BMWs, the Mercedes, these can all be picked open in a minute. And so, everybody better wake up,
right?
Because this is what you have to do to make products better,
right?
For example, we don't sell any tools. We can develop those.
Yeah, we don't
tools.
do that.
The lock manufacturers always tell, well, but is this a specific tool? Do you think it's going to be a problem? And we point them to, the car industry. You can develop that for $100, and you have the the market flood with this type of tools.
Mhm.
Then
Yeah, especially in China.
Mhm.
You know, you can get anything. And you know what? There's no more secrets.
Yep.
Right.
That's what I tell all the locksmiths who say, you know, you've got to keep quiet about this. This is a secret.
Mhm.
There are no more secrets.
Right.
A lot of the locksmiths think this is like the 1600s and the guilds.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
you pass it on from father to son. Don't tell anybody. Everybody knows now.
Well,
Mhm.
but they were trained like that.
Yeah.
When I was when I learned locksmithing with fellows from Colombia, and they were telling me that when a person came to make a duplication of the key, a copy, uh, they were grab that key, go behind some curtains. Actually, they didn't have even a duplication machine.
Mhm.
They did it by hand and came back with the key.
Mhm.
So it was really a mystery. It was everything was concealed, a great mystery.
Yeah.
To teach you how to pick locks,
Mhm.
that was no. You have to be part of either the family. You have to be very trusted with this person. So, the internet and these fast communications that change everything.
Yeah. And I know we're running short on time here, so just one last question. You guys are in the game of breaking things,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Well,
So,
we also make things.
right. So
Yeah,
let's
we're
turn it
involved
over.
we're involved in lock design as well.
So okay, so that's
Because
great.
we work with our clients. They come to us and say, hey, we have a new idea. What do you think?
hmm
And then we get involved from day one.
So that's a great transition into the question of what do you think is next in the world of electronic locks, where they can be, not a great solution. What do you think is next in the?
Well, they are here. I mean, but electronic locks are not going to replace mechanical
Right.
locks for a long time. It's
Mhm.
overkill
Mhm.
because they're more expensive to produce.
What is next is to train the next generation of persons who's going to take the lead, to protect all of us,
Mhm.
because it's going to be a mixture of mechanical, electronics.
And we work with both mechanical, electromechanical, and electronic cylinders.
Mhm.
And I got to tell you, probably 75% of the electronic cylinders we've broken, but not through software, through mechanics. Because one of our rules is electrons don't open doors,
Mhm.
mechanics do. And all your wonderful software and encryption, all this stuff that all the engineers are mesmerized with, doesn't mean anything does. Because at some point something has to move in a lock to unlock the door or lock the door. And so we attack what moves, not the software per se. We have figured out how to circumvent software,
Mhm.
mainly mechanically. And so we're not software engineers. We've got software engineers on our team
Mhm.
and really, really good hackers.
Mhm.
The big problem is the IoT, Internet of Things.
All right.
It's a big, big problem. And, I see Amazon is going to sell you a door lock so that the guy can come to your house
Right.
and leave the package inside. Yeah, get serious.
Right.
As a lawyer, I think that is just looking for so much trouble. And already the video system that goes with it's been hacked.
Right.
I mean, really? You're going to give somebody a key to your house to leave packages?
hmm
I don't think so.
Right.
And so, same thing for me, autonomous cars,
Mhm.
autonomous driving vehicles. Yeah, to me in 25 years maybe, but we're going to have to change our road infrastructure,
Right.
I think, to bury the sensors to make that a reality.
hmm
It's the same thing. Would you get in a flight to fly to Europe with no pilot? I don't think so.
Probably not.
Probably not. Especially, I mean, the best cartoon that I saw, some nerd sitting in a 747 with his laptop, and the screen says, 747 with the tail number, press to reboot. And that's not so far off either,
hmm
because they're all wireless access.
Right.
So, that's the story. We hope this is a success. We're doing everything we can to make it that way. Your deans have been incredibly supportive.
hmm
And we've got a lab. I think we're the only undergrad course that's got a lab space.
Yep.
In Benedum.
Yep.
And so we're going to make it work for the students.
And order making in G34 as well.
Yeah,
They also
okay.
have a lab space.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
Yeah.
we're super excited to have you here.
Yeah,
and
thank you very much.
I'm glad I was here in the initial setup stages of this as well, so that we can kind of roll this out in a very public manner as well and get people interested.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I kind of wanted to touch on lastly is that you may be sitting there and saying, I'm not interested in locks. And at the end of the day, if the last thing you take away is, how to solve a problem in a very different manner, you've won. It has nothing to do with locks. It has everything to do with the approach and the way in which you're teaching students how to solve different problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, then everybody else says, where do I get my set of lock picks?
Right.
That'll be the other
right.
thing. And that's not a problem either.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that it's a vehicle to learn new skills.
Mm-hmm. Once again, thank you very much. And again, Engineering 1050 with Dr. Winter is the product realization course that you guys are co-teaching right now, and that may expand into something totally different.
Yeah, we hope so.
And we'll see where it goes. But thanks again.
Hey, Sean, thanks a lot.
All right.
It's a pleasure.
Yep.